Fake HOA cops tried to arrest me, but they didn't know. I'm FBI agent. The knock on my door was sharp. Too sharp. Two men stood there in cheap uniforms. They called themselves HOA police, and they said I was under arrest. My neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispers spreading down the street. Everyone thought I was about to be dragged away, but what they didn't know was that the real trap had just been set. Welcome back to HOA Unit. I'm Daniel, a homeowner in the suburbs who just wanted a quiet life, but living here, quiet is impossible, because the HOA in my neighborhood doesn't just send letters, they send threats. And this time, they sent fake cops to my doorstep. This is how it all went down. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. I had just finished my coffee and stepped onto the porch. The air was heavy, like something was waiting to happen. And then it came. 3 sharp knocks on my door. Not gentle, not neighborly, but loud, firm, and filled with fake authority. I froze for a second, listening. Another knock followed, sharper this time. Whoever it was, they wanted me to open that door. Now I slowly turned the knob and pulled it open. 2 men stood there. Their uniforms didn't fit right. Too baggy in some places, too tight in others. The patches on their shirts looked like they were ironed on last night. And their badges, flimsy plastic shining under my porch light. They weren't cops, not even close. One of them spoke in a deep voice. "Sir, you are under arrest by the authority of the HOA police." HOA police. I almost laughed in his face, but I didn't. Instead, I tilted my head and gave them a confused look. "What did you say?" I asked slowly. The second man, taller, meaner, stepped forward. "You heard him. You're under arrest for repeated violations. Fence too high, parking your car the wrong way, ignoring HOA orders. Now come with us, or we'll have to take you by force." I could feel the tension in the air. My neighbors had started peeking out from their windows. I saw blinds move, curtains twitch. Every eye in the neighborhood was watching. Some of them whispered, "Finally, he's getting what he deserves." Others gasped, shocked at the sight of 2 officers on my porch, and me. I just stood there, calm, collected. But boiling inside, I looked at their badges again. Printed paper inside cheap plastic holders, not even aligned properly. They couldn't fool a child, let alone me. But here they were, standing on my porch, trying to drag me away in front of the entire neighborhood. And the best part, they had no idea who I really was. The shorter one pulled out a pair of handcuffs. They rattled in his shaky hands. Not even real steel. They looked like the toy cuffs you'd buy at a dollar store. He snapped them open, pretending to look tough. "Hands behind your back. Now." I stayed still. I wanted to laugh, but I held it in, because this was better than comedy. This was a game, and they had no clue they were already losing. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Tell me something. What's my crime again?" The tall one smirked. "Violation 304, fence height, violation 217, improper vehicle storage, violation 101, disobedience of HOA authority, all serious crimes, punishable by arrest, arrest for offense, arrest for parking a car in my own driveway." The absurdity almost choked me, But I played along. The neighbors were glued to their windows, phones in their hands, some already recording. The HOA must have loved this show, their little fake cops humiliating me on my own porch. But they didn't know. I was holding the biggest secret in this entire neighborhood, and when the time was right, I was going to use it. I stepped back slowly. My porch light flickered above me. The night felt heavier, like the air itself was waiting to explode. "You really want to arrest me?" I asked softly. The shorter man nodded eagerly. The tall one smirked and tapped his fake badge again. "Yes. And if you resist, there will be consequences." I leaned closer to him, so close I could see the sweat dripping down his temple. "You sure about that?" I whispered. His confidence cracked for a second, but then he straightened his back. "Yes. HOA law is the law." That was it. That was the moment I knew. They weren't just idiots in uniforms. They were pawns. Pawns sent by someone much bigger, someone hiding behind them, watching this unfold. And I already knew who it was, the HOA president, the woman who smiled at every meeting. But her eyes never did. The one who fined me for leaving my trash can out for 6 extra minutes. The one who said my mailbox was 2 inches too tall. The one who wanted complete control over this neighborhood. She sent them. She thought she could scare me. She thought she could break me. But she had just stepped into the wrong battlefield. Because I'm not just another homeowner. I'm not just another neighbor. I am something else entirely. Something they would regret crossing. I could hear my own heartbeat now. Steady. Strong. This wasn't fear. This was focus. And I was about to turn the game upside down. The shorter man waved the cuffs again. "Last warning. Hands behind your back. Now." I looked him dead in the eye. And for the first time that night, I smiled. Because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. But before I tell you what happened after that smile, let me ask you something. What would you do if 2 fake cops showed up at your door and tried to arrest you over HOA rules? Would you play along, fight back, or expose them right there on the spot? The porch was quiet again. The fake cops still stood there, waiting. But inside my head, memories of this neighborhood started flooding back. Was this moment, this ridiculous scene on my doorstep, didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of months, maybe years, of war with the HOA from the outside. My neighborhood looks perfect. Green lawns, trimmed hedges, painted mailboxes, the kind of place you'd see on a real estate commercial, families smiling, kids riding bikes, sprinklers spraying over bright green grass. But behind that smile is a rotten heart, because here the HOA controls everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The type of grass you plant, the color of your shutters, even how long your car can stay parked on the street. 1 minute too long, and there's a fine, 1 inch too high on your fence. And there's a violation letter waiting in your mailbox. I learned this the hard way. The very first week I moved in, I was unpacking boxes, exhausted, and I left my trash can outside overnight. By morning, there was already a bright yellow notice taped to my door. Violation. Trash container visible past 9 p.m. I laughed, thought it was a joke. But when I went to the HOA meeting the next week, the president didn't laugh. Her name was Carol. Sharp smile, sharper voice. She acted like she ran the entire world from inside that tiny clubhouse. And maybe she did. In her own twisted way, that night she called me out in front of everyone. "Mr. Daniels has failed to follow trash policy," she announced. Neighbors turned their heads, whispering like I had committed some unforgivable crime. It was a trash can. One trash can. But to her, it was power. Would you expose them right there? Embarrass them in front of the entire neighborhood? Or would you play the long game and let them dig their own grave first? The tall one took a step closer. His boots scraped against the wood of my porch, and for the first time that night, I felt the edge of their desperation. They weren't just here to scare me. They were here to perform, to put on a show for the neighborhood, to make me bow in front of everyone. The shorter man raised the cuffs again, his hands trembling. "This is your last warning. Hands behind your back." I didn't move, not an inch. Instead, I tilted my head and studied his face, the sweat dripping down his temple, the way his jaw tightened as he tried to sound tough. He was an actor, a bad one, reading lines from a script written by someone else. Behind him, I noticed blinds snapping shut. My neighbors didn't want to miss this scene, phones still glowing, lenses still aimed at me. It wasn't just two men on my porch anymore. It was the whole neighborhood against me, and that was exactly how Carol wanted it. The tall one grew impatient. He grabbed my arm roughly, trying to twist it behind me. That was his mistake. I didn't resist at first. I let him think he was in control. His grip tightened, his fake authority growing bolder. But then, I shifted just slightly, and with that one subtle move, he realized something. I wasn't fragile, I wasn't weak, and I wasn't scared. He froze for a second, his hand still on my arm. Maybe he felt the strength in my stance. Maybe he realized I wasn't the type of man you drag around like a bag of groceries. Either way, his confidence cracked. The shorter man panicked. "Do it now! Cuff him!" he barked. But the words shook as they left his lips. Even he knew they were in over their heads. I stepped back suddenly, forcing both of them off balance. The cuffs clattered against my railing as the short one stumbled. For a brief second, silence swallowed the night. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the neighbors held their breath. And then, I broke it. "You really think you're going to arrest me? Over a fence?" The tall one's face twisted with anger. He shoved the badge into my face. "This is authority. This is the law." I leaned closer, so close he could see the calm in my eyes. "That's not a badge. It's a piece of paper." His lips parted, ready to argue, but the words died in his throat because deep down, he knew I was right. Still, he pushed forward. "We're taking you in, one way or another." I chuckled softly, shaking my head. "You have no idea what you're walking into." The shorter one lunged with the cuffs, but his timing was sloppy, his move untrained. I caught his wrist before the metal touched me, and with one simple twist, the cuffs snapped shut around his own hand instead. He gasped in pain, fumbling to free himself. The tall one cursed, grabbing him to help, and in that ridiculous moment, both of them looked less like cops and more like children caught playing dress-up. The neighbors saw it too. I could hear muffled laughs from across the street. Even the glow of phones seemed to shake, as people struggled to hold their cameras steady through their laughter. But me? I didn't laugh. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The tall one turned back to me, fury burning in his eyes. "You're going to regret this. We're not alone. Not alone." The words stuck in my head, and suddenly, the bigger picture snapped into place. These two weren't acting on their own. Carol wasn't foolish enough to rely only on them. There was someone else, maybe more than one, waiting in the shadows. Watching, waiting for the moment to step in, I let the thoughts simmer in my mind. Because if that was true, then tonight was far more dangerous than I expected. Still, I didn't back down. I leaned against my doorframe, calm as ever. "You keep saying you're the law. But let me ask you something. Do you even know what real law looks like?" The tall one blinked, caught off guard by my tone. For the first time, his anger cracked into confusion. I smiled, slow and deliberate, because I knew the truth. And soon, so would they. The shorter one finally freed himself from the cuffs, his wrist red, his pride bruised. He snapped, his voice breaking as he shouted, "Enough! You're coming with us right now!" I straightened up, stepped forward. My shadow swallowed them under the flickering porch light, and in that silence, in that fragile moment, they saw something in me, something they couldn't explain, something that made their fake power crumble. I whispered just loud enough for them to hear, "You made a mistake tonight, a big mistake." Their eyes darted between each other, doubt crawling into their faces, and behind them, I caught sight of something moving down the street, a dark figure by the clubhouse, watching, waiting. Carol wasn't the only one pulling strings tonight. The air grew heavier, the street quieter, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath for what would happen next. I stepped closer again, so close they could feel the calm confidence radiating off me. And I said, in the softest, most dangerous voice I could manage, "Do you boys want to see what happens when you try to cuff the wrong man?" The shorter one rubbed his wrist, still red from the cuffs. The taller one clenched his jaw, glaring at me like he wanted to tear me apart. But underneath all that fake toughness, I saw it, fear. The kind of fear that crawls under your skin when you realize you've lost control. And that's when the street got louder. Whispers turned into laughter, neighbors leaning out of windows, pointing, chuckling, phones glowing brighter as people zoomed in, some of them even cheering softly when the cuffs snapped shut on the fake cop's wrist. Carol wanted a show, but not this one. She wanted me humiliated, dragged across my lawn like a criminal instead. Her soldiers were the ones fumbling like fools under the porch light, and I knew that would burn her more than anything. But she wasn't done yet. Carol was never done, because the moment I thought this scene couldn't get any more absurd, the tall one reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He held it high like it was holy scripture. "This is an official HOA arrest warrant." The crowd murmured. I raised an eyebrow. A warrant? Signed by who? Santa Claus? I took the paper, scanned it under the buzzing light. It was laughable, printed on cheap computer paper, font size wrong, signatures scribbled like a child practicing cursive. Not even a seal, not even a stamp, just bold words that meant nothing. But he held it like it was law, like it gave him real authority. I looked back at him, smirk tugging at the edge of my mouth. "This is garbage." The laughter from the windows grew louder, and his face turned red, humiliation dripping down his pride like sweat. But then his voice grew colder. "You think this is a joke? We've got orders to bring you in tonight, one way or another." The shorter one straightened his back again, trying to recover what little dignity he had left. "Resisting HOA authority carries heavy consequences. You'll regret this." Heavy consequences. The words hung in the air, not from them, but from whoever was behind them. I turned my head slightly. That shadow near the clubhouse was still there, watching, not moving, not blinking. That's when I knew Carol wasn't just watching through blinds. She was out there, pulling strings, waiting for her moment to step in. And if I wasn't careful, this could spiral further than I expected. But careful isn't exactly my style. I stepped closer to them again, so close they could feel the calm heat rolling off me. You're waving fake papers, flashing fake badges, and pretending to be something you're not. But tell me something. Do you even know what happens when you impersonate the law? The taller one blinked. Confusion flickered for a split second, but he quickly masked it with a scowl. You think you're smarter than us. You think you're untouchable. But this neighborhood doesn't belong to you. I tilted my head. No. It doesn't belong to you either, and it sure as hell doesn't belong to Carol. The moment I said her name, the crowd reacted. Murmurs spread through the street, some gasps, some smirks. The unspoken truth was out loud now. Carol, the queen of this suburban circus, the mastermind behind every ridiculous letter, the one who thought power was measured in mailbox heights and grass color. Her name cut through the night like a blade. The fake cops stiffened. Their eyes darted to the shadow down the street, as if silently asking for approval. But the figure didn't move. I let the silence stretch again, every second heavier than the last, until finally I spoke. You boys should have stayed home tonight. The shorter one snapped again, his voice cracking as he shouted, We're not leaving without you! He lunged forward, this time with both hands, but his clumsy move only sent him tumbling into my railing. The wood creaked. Neighbors laughed louder, and the taller one scrambled to pull him up. The sight of them, fumbling like rookies, only fueled the absurd comedy of it all. But inside me, there was no laughter. There was calculation. Because if Carol was willing to send fake cops to my door, then she was willing to go further, and the shadow at the clubhouse was proof of that. This was more than humiliation. This was an attack, an escalation, and she wasn't going to stop until she thought she had won. But what she didn't realize was that she wasn't playing a game with just a homeowner. She was playing against someone who had seen the real thing, the real criminals, the real power struggles. And I wasn't about to lose to a woman with a clipboard and too much hairspray. I straightened my back, my voice steady. You say you're not leaving without me. But what if I say, I'm not going anywhere? The taller one hesitated, the shorter one swallowed hard, and the shadow by the clubhouse finally shifted. The figure stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. The porch light didn't reach far enough to show the face. But I didn't need light to know who it was. I felt her presence, the same presence I felt at every meeting, every letter, every smirk when she thought she had me cornered. Carol, the queen herself, stepping out of the shadows at last. The crowd fell quieter. The laughter turned into murmurs again. They wanted to see this, the showdown, the clash everyone had been waiting for, and there she was, her heels clicking against the pavement, her smile sharp as broken glass. You've caused enough trouble in my neighborhood, she called out. Tonight, it ends. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned, cold fire that revealed just how much she wanted this moment. The fake cops straightened their backs again, like soldiers finally seeing their commander, their confidence returning under her gaze. But mine never left, because unlike them, I had nothing to prove and everything to reveal. I let her walk closer, step by step, until she was standing just beyond my porch steps, her eyes drilling into me, her lips curling into that cruel little smile. Are you ready to surrender now? She asked softly, and I smiled right back, slow, steady, unshaken, because she had no idea what I was about to do next. Carol stood at the bottom of my porch steps, her arms crossed, her chin lifted like she was addressing peasants. Her fake cops straightened beside her, puffing their chests again now that their queen had arrived. And the street grew so quiet. I could hear the crickets stop mid-song. Every neighbor was watching, some hidden behind blinds, some bold enough to stand on their lawns, their phones glowing like 100 little eyes aimed at us, recording every second, waiting for blood. Carol smiled, that sharp smile she always wore at meetings, the kind that never touched her eyes. You've embarrassed yourself enough tonight, she said. Do the smart thing. Come quietly, or it will only get worse. Her voice dripped with certainty. She believed this was her victory, that this ridiculous scene was the moment she finally broke me, but she was wrong, so very wrong. I leaned against the railing, calm as ever. Worse? I asked softly. For who? Her smile faltered for a split second, but she caught it, hiding the crack behind a colder glare. For you, she said firmly. For the man who thought he could defy the rules of this neighborhood. No one is above the HOA. No one is above the HOA. The words hung in the air, ridiculous words, but deadly serious to her, and maybe, just maybe, to everyone else watching, because in this neighborhood, people were trained to fear, trained to obey, trained to bend to Carol's authority. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was enforcing submission, and she thought I would bow like the rest. I stepped down one stair, closing the distance between us. Her fake cops stiffened, but she lifted her hand to stop them, her eyes locked on mine, hungry to see me break, but instead, she saw something else, calm control, and maybe the faintest flicker of danger. You keep talking about rules, I said slowly, but what about laws? She tilted her head, confused but still confident. We are the law here. I chuckled low, steady, shaking my head. No, Carol, you're not the law. You're just a woman with a clipboard and a power trip. Gasps spread through the crowd. Someone even laughed nervously from across the street, but Carol's face tightened, her eyes burning like fire beneath ice. You don't understand what you've done, she hissed. You've disrespected me, disrespected the board, disrespected this community. No, I said, stepping down another stair. I've disrespected your illusion of power. Her lips parted, ready to snap back. But before she could, I reached into my jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately. The fake cops tensed, their hands twitching near their belts, but I kept my movement steady, controlled. My fingers brushed the leather wallet inside. The weight of it was familiar, comforting, and dangerous, because in my hand was the one thing that would end this little theater, the one thing that would turn her smug certainty into pure fear. But not yet. Not so fast. I held the wallet at my side, not revealing it yet. Instead, I took one more step down the stairs, now standing just a few feet from Carol, close enough to see the flicker of doubt creeping into her eyes. You wanted this moment, I said softly. You staged this circus, dragged the neighborhood out of their homes, sent your little soldiers to my door. I paused, letting the silence grow heavier. And you thought you'd finally win. The shorter fake cop stepped forward. He's stalling, ma'am. Let us take him. But she raised her hand again, eyes never leaving mine, because deep down, she wanted to be the one to crush me. She wanted the satisfaction herself, and that was her greatest mistake. I lifted the wallet slowly, holding it between us. Her smile returned, sharp and victorious. Finally giving up? She sneered. About time you showed some respect. Respect. That word again, the only thing she ever really wanted. I flicked open the wallet, and her smile froze, because inside wasn't a driver's license or a stack of fines I was ready to pay. It was something else, something real, something she never expected to see. A badge, not plastic, not printed, not fake. The real thing. I held it steady under the porch light, letting its shine hit her eyes. The crowd gasped again. Whispers exploded through the street, and the fake cops staggered back like the ground had been ripped from under them. Carol's lips trembled for the first time. Her voice cracked. What is this? I stepped closer, my voice low and sharp. This is the law. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. Her hands twitched at her sides, gripping her clipboard so tight the wood cracked, because in that single moment, she realized the truth. The man she thought she could humiliate, the neighbor she thought she could break, wasn't just another homeowner. I was something else entirely, something that made her little kingdom look like a toy castle in a sandbox. The fake cops stumbled backward, their badges suddenly nothing more than trash. The shorter one whispered under his breath, "Oh God, we messed up," and the taller one's bravado shattered into silence, their eyes darting between me and Carol, desperate for orders, but she had none to give because she wasn't the queen anymore. She was just another pretender, standing in front of someone she could never control. The crowd fell dead silent again, everyone waiting for my next move, everyone holding their breath. I let the silence stretch, because silence was louder than any words I could speak. And then finally, I leaned closer to Carol. "So tell me, Carol, do you still think no one is above the HOA? The badge gleamed under the porch light, a small piece of metal, but it felt like the entire world shifted when I held it up. The whispers from the crowd grew low. Louder, phones lifted higher, and Carol. Her face was pale as chalk, her clipboard shaking in her hands like it weighed 100 pounds now. The fake cops. They took another step back. Their fake uniforms suddenly looked like costumes from a cheap play. Their confidence drained from them like air leaking from a balloon. The taller one swallowed hard. The shorter one muttered something I couldn't catch, but it sounded a lot like, "We're screwed." And maybe they were right. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence of the crowd carried my words further than a shout ever could. "You came to my door, pretending to be police," I said slowly. "You threatened me in front of my neighbors, and you thought this was power." The shorter one shook his head. "We were just following orders. We didn't mean any harm." Carol whipped her head toward him, her eyes wide with fury and fear. "Shut up!" she snapped. "Don't you dare throw me under the bus." The crowd gasped again. Gasps turned into murmurs, murmurs into laughter. Because for the first time, Carol's perfect act was cracking right there in the open, and everyone could see it. I stepped down the last stair, now standing level with them, so close I could see the sweat dripping down their temples. The taller one tried to stand straighter, but his eyes kept darting to the badge in my hand, like he was staring into fire. "You know what impersonating an officer is, don't you?" I asked them quietly. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. They knew, and they were terrified. Carol's voice cut in, sharp and desperate. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "He's making this up. He's bluffing. He's not—" I snapped my head toward her. Her words stopped cold in her throat. Because in my eyes, she saw something she never expected. She saw the truth, and the truth scared her more than anything else. "You think this is a bluff?" said, raising my badge higher so the crowd could see. "Do you think the United States government hands these out like raffle tickets at a carnival?" Someone in the crowd laughed, someone else clapped, and suddenly, the weight of the entire neighborhood shifted for years. They had lived under Carol's grip, her fines, her threats, her rules. But tonight, they saw her powerless. They saw her crumble, and it was intoxicating. Carol's lips trembled. Her fake cops stood frozen. The whole street was alive with whispers and smirks, and I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every homeowner Carol had humiliated, every neighbor she had fined for grass an inch too high, every family she had bullied over mailbox paint, every voice she had silenced in the name of order. The neighborhood was watching, not just to see what happened to me, but to see what would finally happen to her. I lowered my voice, but I let every word cut through the night air. "You can run your little meetings, write your silly letters, send your notes about trash bins and lawn colors, but the moment you step beyond that, The moment you impersonate law enforcement, you cross into my world. The taller fake cop finally broke. His knees seemed to buckle. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered. "I thought we were just helping her scare you." "Helping her scare me?" I repeated. I shook my head slowly. "No. You helped her expose herself. And now, it's too late to take it back." The crowd roared with nervous energy. Neighbors whispering, "She's finished," and "About time." Phones recording every second. Videos that would spread across the internet by morning. Carol's empire was collapsing. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. She tried one last time, her voice high-pitched, shrill. "This is harassment. This is entrapment. He's not even allowed to do this. But she was drowned out by the voices of her own neighbors. "Sit down, Carol," someone shouted. "You've gone too far," another yelled, and laughter rolled. It across the lawns like thunder. Carol spun in circles, her clipboard shaking, her hair falling from its perfect bun. And for the first time in all the years I had lived here, she looked small, she looked weak, she looked exactly like what she was, a woman who thought she could play queen, but was now just a fraud standing in front of her subjects. I turned my gaze back to her fake cops. They couldn't even look me in the eye. Their heads hung low, their hands twitching nervously at their sides, waiting for me to make the final call. And in that moment, the power was mine. Not just as a homeowner, not just as a man tired of being pushed around, but as something bigger, something Carol could never match. I took one step closer, lowering my voice again so only they could hear. "You have two choices," I said. "You walk away now, and pray you never see me again, or you stay here, and I make one phone call that will ruin the rest of your lives." Their eyes widened. They didn't even hesitate. The shorter one dropped his fake badge on the ground. The taller one followed, ripping his off his chest, and both of them turned and walked away into the night, their shoulders slumped, their pride shattered. The crowd erupted in cheers. It felt like a dam had broken. Years of fear and silence washed away in a single wave of laughter and shouting. Carol stood frozen in the middle of it all, her fake soldiers gone, her neighbors mocking her, her empire burning down around her, and I just stood there, watching it happen, silent, calm, unmoved, because justice sometimes doesn't come from courts or fines. Sometimes it comes from a single moment, a single reveal. That changes everything. The night should have ended there. The fake cops retreating into the dark, the neighbors buzzing with shock and laughter, Carol standing pale and trembling on the sidewalk. It should have been enough. But it hasn't, because she wasn't done, and neither was I. Carol gripped her clipboard like it was a sword. Her voice cracked, but she still shouted over the crowd. "This doesn't change anything," she yelled. "He's still under the HOA rules. He's still—" Her words were drowned out by boos, actual boos from her own neighbors, people who once feared her now mocking her openly, her face twisted with rage and desperation, because in that moment she realized she had lost them. The spell was broken, but I wasn't going to let her crawl back later. Not after tonight, not after sending imposters to my door, not after humiliating this community for years. I stepped closer, close enough to see the panic flickering in her eyes. Her voice dropped, small now. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "I built this neighborhood. I kept it perfect." I shook my head slowly. "You didn't build it, Carol. You poisoned it." The crowd fell silent again, waiting for what came next. Phones still recording, eyes locked on us like it was the final scene of a play. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit a single button. The call connected instantly. A voice answered on the other end, clear, commanding, official. "This is Special Agent Daniels. Confirming situation," I said, my words deliberate, heavy, and loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Carol's jaw dropped. The neighbors gasped again. And in that one moment, the last piece of doubt evaporated. I wasn't bluffing. Not tonight. Not ever. Carol stumbled backward, her clipboard clattering to the ground. The plastic cracked on the pavement like brittle bones. Her last symbol of authority shattered at her feet. Blue and red lights flashed in the distance, sirens growing louder, closer. The crowd parted in awe as real squad cars pulled onto the street. Not fake uniforms this time, not cheap badges. The real thing. The officers stepped out, serious and sharp. They scanned the scene. They saw Carol. They saw the broken clipboard. They saw two imposters trying to disappear into the shadows. And then they saw me, standing calm, badge in my hand. The lead officer nodded at me respectfully. "Agent," he said, "what's the situation?" Carol's mouth opened, but no words came out. She tried to speak, to scream, to command, but her voice was gone. Her power was gone. Everything she thought she controlled had slipped through her fingers. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply said, "Impersonation of officers, harassment, attempted intimidation of a federal agent." The words rolled out like a verdict, final, unquestionable. The officers moved swiftly. The two fake cops were cuffed within seconds, their protests drowned out by the clink of steel. Carol's legs buckled as two officers stepped toward her. She tried to argue, tried to throw words like rights and power into the air, but they carried no weight now. Her hands were pulled behind her back. The cuffs locked, and for the first time ever, Carol was the one being dragged away. The crowd erupted. Cheers, laughter, clapping. Some neighbors even shouted "justice" into the night. Phones caught every angle. Her empire collapsed, not in silence, but in applause, as the squad cars pulled away. Taking Carol and her soldiers with them, the neighborhood stood together in stunned silence. Then slowly, the tension lifted. People smiled, people laughed, people finally breathed. I stood on my porch, watching them for years. This place had been suffocating under her rule. Tonight, it was free, not perfect, not flawless, but free. A neighbor I barely knew walked up to me, a quiet man who always kept his head down at meetings. He smiled for the first time I'd ever seen. "Thank you," he said softly. "You don't know what this means to all of us." And maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't fully know, because being FBI, my job was about bigger threats, national security, criminal networks, danger that stretched far beyond one neighborhood. But tonight reminded me that sometimes the biggest dangers hide in plain sight. Sometimes the deepest fear comes not from criminals in the dark, but from the petty tyrants who live next door, the ones who abuse a little power until it consumes them entirely. I closed my door that night, the cheers still echoing outside, and for the first time since moving here, I felt peace, real peace, because the Queen had fallen, and the kingdom would never be the same again.